Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. If you have your own song you'd like to submit for special selection, you can find a link to do so in the description below. Today's special selection comes at us from Autumn Sphere. It says progressive black metal from Russia, phenomenal structure and melody progression. Alright, let's dive into this. The band is called Grey Heaven Fall. The track is That Nail in a Heart. Let's see what they're bringing for us today. Yeah, interesting. So their phrase is divided in half. 4 bars of one idea, 4 bars of a heavier idea. Halftime feel with some groove thrown into the drums. And here we've actually shifted to 4-bar phrases rather than 8 like we were in the intro. Yeah. Triplet feel lead us into the next idea. Vocals probably. What? There's some straight up prog metal ideas being thrown around in here. That chord progression right there. The slight shift up. Modern hard rock. Oh man. The 16th note bass kicks used as accents to lead into snare hits. That's just whoa. I like the dynamic expression being done in the bells in the right speaker. Really clean production. The cymbals rhythmically lining up with that guitar idea. Yeah, so we have 3 bars of 4 and a bar of 5, I think. Yep, that's what it is. 4, 4, 4, 5. Or alternating 8, 9 if you want to think of it that way. Dude, that hi-hat work is sick. And then just hammering in on that. Yeah, adapting the end of the phrase to a new riff upon itself. You got the blast, double bass kicks, dissonance introduced in the guitars. Massive retardando into this. Really leading into the discomfort, the weight, the tension of black metal. Very interesting how many ideas we're seeing in this song that are just not typical of black metal. I even say they kind of run opposed in some ideas compositionally. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this whole chord progression goes exactly where I expect it to go. They have some really neat ornamentation though before they hit those key notes though. What? Mm. What is going on? I really like how they gave the bass a moment to shine there, but just the most obtuse bass line against everything else. Okay, there we go. Now it is finished. Um, man, just what a strange combination of ideas in here. Uh, Typical preface for a longer track, especially one as dense as this. Mostly gonna have a surface read on this, unlike some of the shorter songs where I can really get into the nitty gritty of what each individual aspect is doing, especially songs that follow, more traditional A B C B patterns, where there's really only three styles and the songs maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes long. I can really get into the nitty gritty of what's happening because I have plenty of time with all of these ideas. But with something like this, it's got a lot of ideas going on in it. It's got 5, 6, 7 sections to it, 12 minutes of music. There's only so much I can store in short term to recall back during an analysis. And assuming this video goes on for 50 or 60 minutes, the further we get away from the song, the less and less I'm going to actually remember detail wise. So probably a lot of this is going to be rather surface level, just exploring what they're doing in majority of the song, more so than analyzing specific sections and specific ideas. But we'll see where this takes us. And yeah, first thing I want to start off with though is what is prog black metal? Because that's what this feels like to me. Right even from the start, I could feel some of the prog metal influences, and I want to separate that prog metal. We checked out the Vandergraaf generator just earlier today, and while that is one of the first times I've really felt a strong lineage between, 70s, 80s prog rock and the modern post 2000s prog metal, to be honest, I've always kind of felt that they were two sides of the same coin. I don't really see too many similarities between them compositionally. They both just take a very similar style of music, rock and metal, and try new things with it, right? prog rock's experimentation is very different from prog metal's experimentation. And it was interesting to hear that moment where I kind of heard some of the compositional ideas we would later hear in prog metal represented in a sonically prog rock sound, especially from 75. But I do want to specifically look at prog metal right here. Like I said, it's a very different kind of experimentation, especially when we look at bands like Human Abstract or Periphery or Between the Buried and Me, or any other bands in that vein where a lot of the progressive elements are textual. Not really well, I guess textures are kind of a sonic quality, but also the way that compositions are handled, which are a bit more about running ideas together, whether they fit or not, rather than finding flow. Flow is more of what I would put in prog rock style experimentation. And again, not to say that prog rock didn't experiment with sharp contrast and sound, but just overall, that era of music I felt had a lot more focus on flow than modern uh, metal. So it's really interesting that this black metal is paired with prog metal's concepts to a point that much like every time you guys throw at me an unconventional black metal song, the question comes up, is this black metal? Honestly, I don't know. At best, I could say this is blackened prog metal. And this ties back to an idea I discovered a while ago. I don't even remember what video it was or where I picked this up at, but I kind of likened black metal not to a compositional style, but to a production one. Black metal borrows its composition a lot from extreme metal and what would eventually kind of branch off into thrash. It's about playing fast, about playing loud, and, well, in their case, screaming over top of it. And that's really kind of it musically. Sonically, though, black metal is very distinct. The types of guitar tones they create, the types of compression they utilize, the amount of compression and distortion and fuzz they put on everything, not just the guitars, but also the drums and the vocals and the bass. Especially when you start looking at where black metal started to push into the extremities of this with lo-fi black metal. So to me, black metal is sort of not really its own genre. It's a blackened production of extreme or thrash metal. That's kind of how I've grown to understand black metal, and I'm not a big fan of thrash or extreme either, so it kind of makes sense that when you just dirty all that up, you dirty up the composition. Well, the composition is already something I don't like, then you put a dirty production on it. That's what I meant to say. I'm probably not going to enjoy that either because I enjoy clean production. And that's where I sit with a lot of black metal. So when it comes to this, I don't really hear much of that thrash element to it. There are a few moments. The opening deals with speed. We do get the blast beat like 6 or 7 minutes in. Double bass kicks are here and there, but most of this is not based off of speed at all. So if you remove that aspect, you really don't have any compositional ground for black metal. So the only thing I can really apply to it then is production. And I think even there's an argument that this isn't really blackened. There's definitely fuzz on everything. Everything has a bit of a distortion to it. It can be a bit difficult to discern the original timbres in some of these areas where it feels like the fuzz is more prominent than the tone itself. But for what it's worth, I heard every instrument other than the bass clearly, which is very black metal to cover up the bass guitar. The drums were a bit muffled, but the cymbals were bright. And everything was distinctly placed in the sound sphere. They didn't go for a unified wall of sound idea. Um, it's kind of, I guess, what we would call hi-fi black metal, which I still have a problem accepting that because to me, black metal is about obscuring things, production wise, sonically, and hi fi black metal goes against that. So we kind of just get slightly fuzzy thrash. And is that black metal? Like, this black metal is just a huge thing for me. Like, I don't get it. And probably that statement right there is going to invite another 20 special selections worth of black metal. And, well, okay, I guess. There's no fighting it now. There's a large black metal portion of the community, or maybe just a very vocal small portion. I don't quite know yet, but there's definitely a few people in here who continue to toss black metal at me, and that's fine, I suppose. It is what it is. But like I still I don't know if it's just me. I don't think black metal's real. Anybody else getting that? Lo-fi black metal is kind of the same thing as mid-fi black metal, just harder to hear. And hi-fi black metal doesn't sound like black metal to me because musically it's thrash, because black metal doesn't have a musical identity. And sonically it's kind of clean, which doesn't make it blackened, which puts me in this area of is it even black metal because it's a very clean production. It's slightly fuzzy, but uh, not really too fuzzy, not really too compressed, not really too dirty. There's a couple of sections where I'm like, yeah, that's that blackened obscurity, I know. But most of it is just feels like a budget production of progressive metal. And that's what it feels like to me. This is what would happen if Between the Buried and Me just actually this feels a lot like not Between the Buried and Me. There's another band. Can't think of their name. But anyways, it's like Between the Buried and Me's debut album production, which I believe was done on a budget, with a slightly less technical band. I can't think of their name, but it's that same kind of style of it's all. I kind of get some metalcore ideas in here. Is that weird? All right, let's talk about the music because this whole conversation of is it black metal is going nowhere. I still don't know if it is. It feels like slightly blackened, possibly proggy metalcore. That's what I get out of this, which is a weird, convoluted thing to say. Moving on. So let's dig into why I had all these thoughts in the song while I was listening to it. I already talked a lot about the production, right? I don't believe a lot of the production here is super gritty. It's very clean. I kind of explained that I can hear everything, which is unusual for black metal. Maybe I'm getting more adjusted to it. Maybe this is just some really hi-fi black metal. Musically, though, there are a couple of ideas in here that are just so far from black metal. I can't even begin to reconcile that somebody could call this black metal with these ideas taking up a majority of the musical aspect. A lot of it is guitar work, but we'll get into some drums as well. Um, the opening idea is straight up black metal. We have tremolo picking, and it's this nice 8-bar idea. We move through 4 chords, and then we move to a darker chord. It's like a half step beneath the original root, what I perceive to be the root, the first chord we heard. And then we move into an idea that sort of removes itself from that 1 chord per bar idea and plays a bit of a riff through this. And it's almost, I didn't notice it at the time because I didn't know what I was in store for, but retrospectively, that's the word I want. It feels like a red flag. It's the warning. It starts off feeling like black metal. We have a 4-bar phrase that's just so black metal. It's might as well just be parody. Um, it's just so on the nose for stereotypical black metal. And then the next 4 bars are like, actually, check this out. We're not going to return to that one. We're actually going to put a little bit of grit in there that you weren't expecting. Then we're going to play a little bit of a riff, playing around with some ideas, playing around with things rhythmically, bringing in notes outside of the key. We're going to jazz this up a little bit. We're going to prog it up a little bit. Whatever genre turned adjective you want to put there. And at the time I was just kind of whatever. That's just what they're going for. But no, like it's a red flag. It's the thesis statement of the song. Yes, this is black metal. Yes, you might expect black metal, but actually lots of things are going on under the surface. And that's it right there. One half black metal, one half prog. And I wish I'd picked up on that sooner. Um, because as we move into the song, especially as we get away from this section, we so rarely hear tremolo picking after this. A lot of the time, we are looking at sparser ideas or moving riffs that tend to cycle a small idea before ending in a larger one, much like a lot of black metal's idea of 3 bars of a single idea and then a lick to punctuate it. Typical rhythm I like to showcase that is like dun digga dun digga dun digga dun digga da 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 dun digga dun digga dun. Right? You have this static idea. You have 3 versions of that, and then on the 4th one, instead of doing it again, you got a nice little lick to punctuate it, right? This is like standard hard rock writing. Black metal picked up a lot of this because black metal came from extreme metal, which was like sort of thrashy, and that came from like hard rock. Like there's this huge lineage of why black metal would replicate this. But the thing is that this idea is transformed into something very prog metalcore, where we have some more interesting dyads being played here outside of black metal's typical, just kind of droomy, dreary, gloomy stuff. Um, they kind of have a bit of a bite to them, not dissonant in the way that's weighty, but dissonant in the way that's just like, huh, that's a weird note choice. And it gets your brain going. Why would they do that? Instead of saying, oh, this is heavy, I feel the weight, right? It's a different kind of dissonance that they aim for. And they also have these really interesting runs that sometimes feel like little swirls and sometimes they're just linear rises, but they're changing. Like every 4 bars, or I should say every phrase, at the end of every phrase, we have a different lick to punctuate the idea. In fact, I think the entire phrase might have other variations in it too that I missed. It's just that the lick was most prominent because it's the exclamation mark at the end of the phrase, at the end of the sentence. You see periods all the time. You're like, oh, that's all the same. Then you see an exclamation mark or question mark, and you're like, oh, that's different. That catches your eye, right? It's bigger than the period. It's less common. That's what I felt here. Was that the licks were kind of louder than the rest of the phrase. They were easier to differentiate, or at least pick up on the differentiations. Um, but yeah, and see, I talked about different dyads here, and sometimes we had just dissonance, right? But we also had the prog metal or the metalcore or the post-hardcore dissonance. I don't know what to call it. It is that tone. Sometimes it's done with pitch harmonics to really get a squeal against it, but it's 2 notes that I think are typically played a half step apart to really get maximum dissonance out of, and it's that screechy squeal that we often hear in like post-hardcore breakdowns where it's like the lowest note they can play, and then every once in a while you just get this really screechy note like don 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 something like that, right? They're utilizing that technique. I don't think we're using pitch harmonics here because I don't really hear the squeal. I just hear that super tight tension of higher notes. And they're utilizing that to create their dyads in these moving parts. Very metalcore, very post-hardcore style of idea. I don't really hear it too often in anything that branched off of extreme metal. They went and found dissonance in other darker ways instead of going for the screechy kind of dissonance. To me, that's a very, very different style of metal. And like I said, just kind of marrying these 2 styles makes no sense to me. Like, I don't understand how this song works because musically, I definitely hear metalcore in a lot of it, but it's not like I would never put this in the same camp as Between the Buried and Me, right? I would never put this in the same camp as, Periphery or, any post-hardcore bands or anything that kind of branched off of emo. Um, they all have a very different sonic quality, but I also don't think this is black metal. I don't know where to put it because of this. It doesn't. I hear all these ideas that fit in other places, but I don't have anything I don't have a reference for if somebody were to combine them. And I honestly don't know how it works. We're going to get into this in the next section when we bring it down and enter into the first mellow section, because that broke my brain even more. Um, but yeah, so like a lot of these, actually I think that was the end of it. A lot of these riffs, they end in these really sharp not staccato, these really sharp dyads. And it's just like, to me, very metalcore, very post-hardcore, nothing in the heavy realm, not post-metal, no black metal, nothing in this area of metal really does that. It's sort of on the other side. Um, Really weird, again, to hear it. What else was happening? Oh, drums, right? So occasionally we'll get the double bass kicks at the end. We got the blast beats, right? That was nice, and I liked the way it was implemented because it was done as a punctuation on an idea. We didn't get a section of blast beats. We got a drum fill of blast beats that worked as a transition, both to loop back to the beginning of the pattern, but also to move into the next section when that time came around. A way of utilizing black metal ideas within the compositional structure of progressive metal. Um, and that, I think, is one of the few times that I think I listened to this wild marriage of ideas and said, now that works. I thought that was slick, right? That was very cool. I love the way that they came up. And I mean, maybe it'll happen in other tracks, but I wish that that was my experience with more of this. Instead of just being confused and wondering how this happened, which honestly is a very cool feeling. It's like when you hear a cat like moo or something and you're like, uh, I don't know if I'm scared or excited. Like, that's kind of cool, but it's also kind of weird. And that's what this feels like to me. But this one moment, I wish I had more of this emotion of just saying, yes, that's how that's supposed to get mixed, right? That's how these two are supposed to come together. That is a beautiful way of taking these two ideas and merging them instead of being kind of confused about it. Um, but yeah, that was just phenomenal. Love that section. Anyways, but a lot of the rest of the time, the drums are doing. Well, actually, I think the drums just marry the two very well. Because here's another instance. There was one section in the middle. We entered this super groovy section, right? A lot of it was alternating bass, kicks, and snare, with the snare accenting 2 and 4. I think is what was going on at the moment. And the bass kicks were not just on 1 and 3, but they were also syncopating against the snare. So you might have like a boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, right? So we have the bass on 1 and 3, but we also have the bass um, between 1 and 2, so that we can have a syncopated attack against the snare, right? But take that idea and ramp it up to the level that your bassist can easily fit 4 beats into a small pocket of time, 4 bass kicks. And so instead of the ka, now we got ga. I don't even know if I can do it that fast. But instead of that 1/8 note into the downbeat, let's put 4 notes into that 1/2 of a beat that goes into the snare hit. And that's exactly what happened here. We took some of the speed of the double bass kicks and the intensity and just that raw power that black metal brings to the table and put it into the groove of a metalcore idea. And it's just like, wow, why hasn't anyone done this? I mean, maybe someone has done this. Why hasn't this been brought to my attention? Because now that I'm thinking about it, metalcore is what I grew up on. Like, that was the heavy stuff that I listened to. I listened to, Human Abstract and Periphery in my college days, I think it was. And to me, that was the heavy music. Like, anything heavier, I knew there was stuff that was heavier, but it was always like, nah, that's too heavy for me, right? I don't get that music. But this metalcore was something that it was heavier music that I felt comfortable with. And so this marries a genre I'm very familiar with black metal, which I'm not familiar with and just not really doesn't really work for me too much. In a way that I think kind of works, even if I'm not sure that this is black metal. But yeah, this is a bridge song, maybe possibly a bridge band for me to get into black metal. And for those new to the channel, bridge song, bridge bands, that's just what I talk about when a song kind of bridges two ideas so that you can bring something not so palatable and package it in within something that is sort of like a Trojan horse for harsh music. I'm not a big fan of black metal's production, but if you give me neat melody writing like this that I feel comfortable with, the production can kind of get snuck into my ears. I can begin to like this on the musical level, and after repeated listens, I might get more adjusted to the production so that when I listen to more pure black metal stuff, it doesn't sound as harsh to my ears because I have experience with the overall sound. Bridge songs, bridge bands, they're very important, especially when you're talking about anything that drastically pushes against somebody's general palatability levels. Whether it's something like the brightness of hyperpop or the just the twang of country, or even shifting styles completely and moving to hip hop, which uses rap as a vocal delivery, there's always going to be something that acts as a hard barrier for somebody to get into a genre that's has a different aspect to them. And bridge songs or bridge bands are a way to help people get into it on a steady level, right, without being thrown to the sharks. Um, and I think that's where this is starting to feel for me. Anyways, back to the drums. Was that it? Do I keep segueing out of things right as soon as I'm done with them and I come back thinking I'm not done? So yeah, I talked about the double bass kicks being utilized as like a single beat in like a metalcore pattern. I talked about and the blast beats being used later on as a like a drum fill. Oh, the cymbal work. I gotta talk about cymbal work. So this reminds me a lot of Umgwa's style of black metal drumming, where the bass and the drums are kind of secondary to the cymbal work. Although in Umgwa's situation, the bass and the drums were doing traditionally more black metal stuff with just raw power and speed constantly playing, from what I remember. And here we have more traditional, slower styles of drumming that are paired with just these beautiful cymbal flourishes. So, kind of the same idea, but instead of leaning into the black metal, kind of pushing out of it. While still, as I mentioned, retaining some black metal ideas that are used in pockets of the more, post hardcore style of drumming. I'm curious, the more I think about it, if the drummer came from another style of music. Yeah, if anybody has information on that, let me know. Because, I hear a lot of, prog metal, proggy metalcore, post-hardcore kind of stuff in the drumming, with some black metal ideas introduced into it, almost like they started with the metalcore foundation and learned about black metal styles later and incorporated it into their own style. That's what it feels like to me, and I think that's very cool. It definitely, at least this specific song, doesn't sound like the opposite, where they were a black metal drummer that learned about metalcore and wanted to incorporate those styles into their black metal playing. But the end result, though, is that we have a lot of sections that are super groovy because of the syncopated ideas and the back and forth of the bass and the snare. But there's also a lot of technicality in these groove through ornamentation. Not only just with the cymbals, which sort of dance around the groove sitting in the snare and the toms and the bass kicks, but also these little injections of faster playing that would be more at home with black metal, like the double bass kicks and the blast beats. And it makes the drummer exceptionally versatile. Not only just to be able to bend with the mood of each section, but also to help dictate the future of the song, where we can kind of foreshadow ideas that we'll hear later, presently, but not as a full idea, but as a little pocketed idea. I think it's really neat. The vocals, I think, are the They're black metal, right? I don't think I hear anything other than black metal in vocals, and maybe that's the thing that kind of roots it all for me. I think if we had more traditional post-hardcore vocals here, I might not get much of a black metal element at all. Who knows? Um, but there's definitely something that roots it back to black metal for me, and the vocals I can't hear as anything else. They are very unique in their own, but it's also in the realm of that black metal harsh scream. Um, we do hear quite a bit of lyrics, but there's also a lot of other sections, and I think that's what we're going to get into now. Um, you'll notice I avoided talking about the bass, and it's honestly because I didn't hear much of them, which is just such a black metal thing to do with your production, until the middle section when we went quiet. We brought it down a little bit. This was interesting because we chilled out. Black metal does not chill out very often, which I say knowingly that yesterday we checked out a black metal song that chilled out. 2 times in 1 week. I don't understand how you guys do it. Um, anyways, though, we chill out and a power ballad guitar solo comes in. What? I don't even know how to reconcile this. I'm slowly coming around to the proggy metalcore meets black metal thing. Yeah, there's some ideas that work there. Why does this work? I have no reference for this, other than the fact that we kind of removed all the black metal element and kind of went pure power ballad for a little bit. But the chordal stuff underneath the solo was very black metal, and I think that helps keep the dreariness, the gloominess of the vibe. And then the power metal solo, the power ballad solo, just kind of exists on top of it and leans into it. There's not a lot of shred going on. It's actually a lot of held out notes, and it continues this idea of building block solo writing by having these 2 bar phrases where we kind of move a lot and then hold a note, and then do a little bit of movement and then hold a note, shred a little bit, hold a note. And so it allows the song to, one, have a really nice flow to it. But two, also to lean on these notes to add weight to the overall solo. If we just shredded through the whole thing, it would have provided a levity and a bounciness to it that would not have jived well with the chord progression that was going on underneath, and then it would have just clashed, right? But instead, we have a little bit of movement and then a held out note which kind of leans into the weight but also has this push and pull to it. There is momentum, and then there's lethargy, and that could represent a lot of things, but to me, first thing that comes to mind is just some sort of um, like melancholy or depression or anything that would lend itself to um, sloth, laziness. What is that word? Procrastination. You get the motivation to do something and maybe you start it, and then you're 5 minutes in and you're like, well, I could be catching up on insert popular TV show here, right? So you go and do that. So you get these bursts of passion, of energy, and you maybe start something and then you just kind of hang out for a little bit, and it just kind of dreariness kicks in, right? The lethargy does. So that's what this push and pull felt like to me, especially with the dreariness underneath. It kind of felt like trying to break out of some sort of depression and the mood always coming back and taking you over. And I think it works very well. In fact, this is one of the few times I would say that we're marrying two melodic ideas with one of them being black metal. I don't really hear a lot of black metal melody writing anywhere in the song, other than, like I said, the intro. The first 4 bars, the first half of the opening phrase feels very black metal, but to me, it was designed to be a thesis statement to say, yes, this song's going to be kind of black metal, but also check out this prog stuff. And we're just kind of mix these two, right? It's a warning for what's ahead. This feels like a genuine mixture, though. We have the weight and the dreariness that black metal typically brings to the songs, albeit in a less compressed and aggressive manner, and we're allowing that to be the foundation for a more traditional ballad solo. And ballads are kind of sad, but it's not a dreary kind of sad, right? It's more like pop culture kind of sad. Like, my wife left me and she took my truck, and I'm sad about my truck. Like that kind of sad. Um, I don't know why that's the kind of sad lyrics I went to right there. But yeah, so we kind of mixed that sort of poppy kind of sad with like a pure black metal dreariness, and it works. Maybe that's why it worked, because they're both kind of negative. Just one's a little lighter, but yeah, it actually comes together well. Um, After this, we did some more stuff, some of the heavier stuff, combining ideas. I've already talked about some of that stood out to me. And then the song ends on a very slow section. We have a huge tempo shift. I called it a ritardando, but thinking back, I think it was immediate, so I think it was just a tempo change. I don't know. Um, what went on here? There was something interesting. Oh, yeah. So the song starts falling apart. Why? Yeah, I don't know. Um, the guitar has a very simple idea, right? Four key notes that designate our chord progression, and then some flourishes in between. So it's like da 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 dee da 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 dee da da da. So you get these really emphasized hits, and we hold on to them. These are our chord progression, and the little flourishes lead us from one into the next. And all the flourishes aren't like that, and the chord progression isn't like that. I'm not a singer, I don't have the right notes, and I definitely don't have perfect pitch to be able to sing exactly what I heard. And what I heard was like 50 minutes ago, so it's not going to be perfect. But you get the gist of it, right? The idea of the key notes and the flourishes. Um, and eventually, though, we kind of add another flourish to this, which is the ping pong. It's like bum 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 da da dee da dee da bum 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 bum. Like when I sing it like that, right? And I have sort of a more major feeling to the chord progression. It feels like a pop song. And I think that's what my mind was going for there when I heard it, and it just doesn't match. I laughed so hard in that section. And Grey Heaven Fall, if you're listening, I was not laughing at your writing or your performance or anything like that. I just had a real tough time separating this out because I literally heard black metal pop right there. Obviously, it's in a heavier style and we have darker chord progressions, but the raw idea there shows up so often in pop music, especially pop ballads. And you guys had pulled your tempo down a bit here, so yeah, I hope you guys know I'm not laughing at you. It's just, it was a really comedic thing to my ears. And it felt like y'all were telling a joke, even if you most likely weren't there. And yeah, I hope that comes across as a genuine sort of laughter and not like I'm attacking you guys. um, Real unique idea there, though. So that comes in, and then the drums, every third bar had this really strange fill, which started not like a half a beat before this third beat, but like somewhere in the pocket there. So like when we subdivide beats, normally have 1, 2, 3, 4. We subdivide halves as ands, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we subdivide that with e's and ahs. 1 e and a 2 e and a 3 e and a 4 e and a. And those are going to be quarter of a beat. Um, and this was not on any of that. I feel like this riff or this little drum fill was like in between an and an or maybe the and the next beat. And it's super janky in a way. Like, I don't want to use that word because it makes it sound like it's poorly done, but it just pushes so hard against the groove, which is fairly established there. It's not a super groovy section, but the beat is established, right? We have very simple quarter notes and eighth notes in the guitar work. I think the drums were working off of basic quarter and eighth notes as well. And it just kind of comes in there. It's like it feels like it trips over itself getting to this idea. It feels like it's either just a hair late or just a hair early, and it's just like, ugh, why don't you just land on the downbeat? Um, so it literally falls. It literally sounds like it's trip, and it's a fast idea too. Like this idea of tripping, I could easily picture somebody, talking to a friend walking forward and literally tripping over the bass kick and the snare and the tom that are set up, right? And just like the the collateral sound of physically, literally falling on a drum kit. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And it's just in the middle, and then the drummer just goes back to playing on the downbeats again, like nothing happened. And it happens every repetition of the phrase. And then the bass comes out of nowhere. I haven't heard this dude all song, right? He's given a chance to shine in the spotlight and just playing the most obtuse bass line I've ever heard. It feels like it's half walking a bass line, arpeggiating across the chord progression while also deciding to just randomly cherry pick notes from outside the key and occasionally speeding up notes while also gradually changing the volume dynamic. Sometimes they're louder at fortissimo, and sometimes they back it down to pianissimo, and then sometimes it's just kind of in the middle range. And it's like, what is going on here? It sounds like it's trying to fade in, but also messing with the volume dial while they're doing that and playing these things that don't seem to be matching with what the guitar is doing. And I honestly have no idea. It was such a strange section of the track. I really hope when we get into the lyrics, something about falling apart or losing a sense of identity happens somewhere in there, because that's all I can hear here. The song bounced back and forth between so many ideas, and when the song finally ended and had a chance to find itself, it fell apart instead of picking up the pieces and forming a cohesive idea. And that's what the song means to me musically. It's an interesting track. It has me intrigued for what Grey Heaven Fall does elsewhere on the album or in other albums. It is an interesting bridge band where I can feel blackened elements, but I can't pinpoint them out. A lot of it doesn't feel like black metal to me, but I can't safely put it in any other genre because there is this blackened thread that holds it back. Let's take a moment to look at the lyrics. Found these in a rather interesting place. The Metal Encyclopedia. And I dropped them into Deep L Translator just because I've been told it's more accurate than Google Translate. And based on, well, actually, I did drop it into Google Translate too, but based on the two translations I got, I liked Deep L's better. I don't know if it's more accurate, but it feels like it preserves the intention more. So, I don't know if this is, like I said, an accurate translation, but this is what I have. Because it is in Russian, as Autumn Sphere stated back at the beginning when we looked at their comment. Falling into darkness is like a gulp of truth, as a sign that silently commanded me to attack on the image of the Lord losing power. I drown in the emptiness that is within me, with cold, maddening madness sprawled, disfigured and defiled that which I dared to despise. I felt the wormy tree of sorrow blooming in me, the wormy tree of woe, and I guarded it. I shielded it with the dome of suffocating anxiety. In anxiety, I glorified my fall, as long as I was obsessed with absurd plunge into the vastness of emptiness. So yeah, this is interesting. We have somebody who's falling into a type of negativity. I don't know what the negativity is. It's a funk of some sort. But it was like a gulp of truth. He saw the image of the Lord with a capital L. So I'm going to assume we have some sort of Christian God here. Saw the image of the Lord losing power. And they took this falling into darkness as a sign to attack the image of the Lord losing power. I drown in the emptiness that is within me. So, negativity, right? Being in a funk. Disfigured and defiled, that which I dared to despise. I felt sorrow growing in me as well as woe, and I guarded and shielded them with suffocating anxiety. So, yeah, it feels like somebody is falling into depression here. They despise themselves. They feel sad all the time. It's just, very negative outlook on life. They even stated at the beginning they fell into darkness. And instead of trying to combat this, seeking help, finding support networks within, your friends or family, or even outside of that with like, counselors or therapists or anything. They guarded all of this darkness with anxiety. I think that's a very powerful image. Not only that, said guarded it with suffocating anxiety. And through the anxiety, I glorified my fall. I think this is an interesting counter song to yesterday's track about depression. Uh, depression leading you to, self hate and self doubt, and eventually possibly suicide. I think this is a more articulated way of approaching that same idea. Yesterday I pretty much condemned the entire lyrical meaning, but here I feel empathetic. I feel bad for this person, right? And obviously, there seems to be a little bit of maybe not at the time an understanding, but in retrospect, an understanding of what was going on at the time. Because there is this negative idea that the anxiety was suffocating, right? It wasn't something to praise, right? And it even said that I glorified my fall. And at least here, I don't know what it sounded like in the lyrics, but at least in this purely textual idea, it almost seems like that's viewed negatively. They understand, at least after the fact, that this was not the way to go about it. It says, as long as I was obsessed with my absurd plunge into the vastness of emptiness. Dot, dot, dot. Doesn't finish that sentence, goes on to the next idea. The Lord is dead in his bosom, and his gray paradise is fallen, and on his grave I will erect a temple of the dark covenant, where in suffering I saw an answer. Thou art me, or did I make thee, Lord? So on God's grave, he's going to build a temple of the dark covenant, right? Very satanic sort of idea. It says, in the suffering I will look for an answer. Are you the Christian God? Are you me, or did I make you? Interesting idea. I cast the black flame of hatred upon the altar of the Creator. I am his black disease. I am the nail in my coffin. I praise the chaotic dance of worms in the chilled flesh of Christ. I am the keeper of pain and innocent hearts bound to the Creator's black coffin. Well, that took a dark twist. I no longer feel like they decided to look back on their time and say that that was the wrong way to go about it, because they seem to be pretty happy where they are in their descent. Hmm. And what's interesting is, like, yesterday when we checked out Shining, the music and the lyrics all fit together. Here, I don't think so. I mean, there was that, it was a little bit more dynamic black metal, so it wasn't a complete fit. But here, I don't get any of this in the music. The music to me is very playful, it's very intricate. It's very, that's the thing about more complex music, is that it's not going to feel like a simple thing, it's going to feel more complex. And this feels very black and white. This just says that I was, basically, I went through depression, made me anxious, and I just stuck with it. And then I decided to seek out answers about life through my suffering, and I realized that I can kill gods, that I am a black disease, and that I am the nail in my own heart. So I cause my own pain, and I guess that's fine. I praise the dance of worms in Christ. I am the keeper of pain and innocent hearts, bound to the Creator's black coffin. There's a lot of pride in this. I am all of this. I cast the black flame of hatred upon the altar of the Creator. And just, man, what a turn. I was really hoping, based off of that first set of that first stanza, that there's going to be some reflection on this and say, that was me then. I came out of that. But no. And I think that the song breaking down at the end is a great way of tying all that together, because as this person breaks down and accepts the suffering and negativity rather than looking for ways to become better, they allow themselves to break down and be hurt. They are their own nail in their heart. And the song could rise to greatness and instead breaks down at the end and becomes something that it didn't have to be. It could have been a great marriage between all of these ideas and instead decided to just be nothing. Hmm. Man, two black metal disappointments in a week where I love the music and the lyrics just completely ruin it. Unless somebody's got a different read on this. I think it's pretty clear though. Again, though, this is an imperfect translation, so maybe that ties into it too, but the Google translation was very similar, just less poetic. And I only based that off of the first few lines, which is why the last stanza kind of threw me off. I didn't want to completely, spoil the lyrics for me, and I didn't want the lyrics to have any sort of hold over my impression of the music. Right? That's why I always do the music first and then the lyrics next, because I don't want to build any of the emotion I feel out of the music based on the lyrics. Because I feel like that's just baiting of some sort. Like I might be finding things that aren't necessarily there just so I can tie the two together. Uh, I don't, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But based off of the few lines I looked at, maybe now that I've seen all the lyrics, I'll go back and check the Google translation. But I really don't think there's going to be a lot of meaning differences. I think all the lines are going to be translated fairly similarly. Anyways, man, that's just between Shining and now, what is this? The Gray Heaven Fall. I just don't think black metal's for me, man. Every time I find a song I really enjoy, the lyrics just, I don't know. Anyways, this is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this track. Anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to expand upon, anything that you want to correct me on. And I think I asked a couple questions. I don't remember what they were. If you can answer those for me, that'd be fantastic. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree, which takes you to this menu right here. Has everything related to the channel. Pick up some merch, submit your own special selections, join the Patreon, and help craft the future of the channel. Um, Discord, Twitter, just a bunch of stuff. Go ahead and check it out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow. What day's tomorrow? Oh yeah, tomorrow's Friday. Jeez, today's Thursday already? Oh my jeez. Okay, tomorrow we're gonna have a Pride track and our final saxophone but not jazz. And that'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.